like a lot of people here, we tried to think about this idea of like forming kind of like a central hub. One of the first concerns though was, do we want to keep the viaducts, or do we want to get rid of them? So we decided, because obviously there's two viaducts, why don't we actually take one of them down and use one of them as a transport corridor? The kind of central idea with this, well, there's actually two ideas. The main idea is to actually use the material from one of the taken down viaducts to rebuild the seawall, because obviously, you know, with regards to sea level rise, stuff like that's going to come up in the future, we might as well actually use that material for something that's really, really practical, and that opens up the space within the actual the area itself. What we've actually got in there is we have an experimental transportation zone. So we had a lot of crazy ideas about go-karting. We had this idea of what was it? A massive water slide sort of running backwards and forwards between the two places. And so we've got this idea of obviously, like, you know, the raised what do you call it, transformation of from one place to another. But underneath all of those things is this kind of this garden community area. I don't know if you can really kind of make out what's going on here, but we have this idea of using the tops of these platforms, like the leftover platforms, so they'd actually sort of still be there, these kind of like relics of the past, as it were, to have these like sort of massive music platform stages with, I guess, musicians got them jam, play to everyone who's underneath. And we had this idea, sorry, I saw it somewhere else as well, this sort of helter-skelter slide to get up and down from the top, as well as sort of hanging gardens and baskets and stuff. Another use is, obviously this is just one of them, to use this as a projected space. So you could ask installation artists and interactive artists to create media that would actually project onto the actual surfaces themselves. So basically, you know, you could sort of play around with that, and you invite a different artist every month or whatever to come along and project on there. Am I missing anything?
You say where
what?
You say where the idea is.
Where did the idea come from?
So what we're trying to do is, kind of where the whole idea came from is that we're looking at the areas around us. So we're looking at Main Street area, Strathcona area, as well as downtown, and kind of how these things all connect to each other. So one is living space and one is working space. So this is kind of the area between it. So in terms of the kind of overlapping corridors, as the previous group was saying, this is kind of putting it into, the bottom is more like living, working public space. There's lots of restaurants and gardens and people to kind of stay in later, whereas the top would much more be transportation. So hence the experimental transportation zone. We were talking about really crazy ideas, like how can you electrify the whole thing so that you could generate electricity? How can you use experimental vehicles on top of it? How can you create even light transport on top of it? Things like that. So yeah, so it's kind of just kind of creating and kind of overlapping the different areas.